everybody, and welcome to More Sports and Les Levine. Good Friday afternoon to you. We hope your weekend is off to a good start. We've got a jam-packed show. We'll talk some Cavs, free agency in the NBA closing in at the end of the weekend. That starts for real on Sunday. We will also talk some Browns. Training camp just a month away. We'll also check in on the Buckeyes. But we begin with the Cleveland Indians as the 4th of July closes in. The Indians have tightened the gap, the distance between the first-place Twins and the second-place Indians. Let's welcome in Cleveland.com columnist Doug Lesmerises. And, Doug, my question that I'll throw out to you, can the Indians catch the Twins? They've eaten into that lead. Can they do it?
Yeah, I think they – I wrote something at the start of June that in the last 24 years, only one team that was more than 10 games out on June 1st had come back and won the division. So the odds were long for the Indians because they were more than 10 games out. But within that context of being less than a 1% chance, I said I thought they could do it. And I think they're on the track to give themselves a shot. I think they'll get this down to 5 or 6 by the All-Star break, and then the Twins open the second half in Cleveland. And there are things that have happened that we've all seen that the Indians really in this month have transformed themselves without having to make a deal. And so I know people are very interested about them selling or buying or what they're going to do. They're already different. And so I don't think it would be a bad idea to basically ride with what they have. The Twins will come back to the pack a little bit. And I think the Indians have yet to put their best foot forward.
And to kind of dovetail on that, all of the Twins, 4 of the 5 Twins starters have a significantly lower ERA right now than they do for their career. So that's going to come back. And keep in mind, the Indians, Clevenger starts today in Baltimore. He hasn't pitched very much. Corey Kluber hasn't pitched very much. Carlos Carrasco hasn't pitched very much. The Indians are getting pretty good starting pitching from unexpected sources.
Yeah, the depth in rotation is unbelievable, which leads us back to that thing that everyone talked about in spring training, which is traded a starting pitcher to help the offense. But at this point, that's not where I'm focused because, as you said, they've managed to win with these other guys, others filling in. Shane Bieber's been really good most of the season. So you let these starting pitchers come back, and the desperation to fix the lineup has decreased because it has fixed itself already. Carlos Gonzalez and Leonis Martin are gone, and those were 2 of the biggest problems in the lineup. Oscar Mercado and some other things they're going to get a chance to do. Bobby Bradley now up. They're fixing themselves on the move without making a big trade. So the other big holes in the lineup were Jason Kipnis and Jose Ramirez, and you weren't going to do anything to get rid of them, and they're starting to come around. So if Kipnis and Ramirez have good second halves, you now have Mercado and Bradley in the majors, I think you've solved to a degree some of the lineup issues. You don't have to trade starting pitching, which brings me back to what I said at the start, which is ride with what you have. This window has not closed. And anyone who was ready to jump the gun in the last several weeks, say they're 10 out, it's over, let's trade Bauer, let's trade Lindor, you've got to pull back on that because they still have a chance to win.
Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know you did something with Phil Steele, the college football guru. Tell me a little bit what you see as the strengths of the Buckeyes, where you see Ryan Day's first year headed.
Yeah, it's still really hard to get a read on it. And when I had Phil on our Buckeye Talk podcast on cleveland.com, we were looking for a lot of context of Ohio State. One thing that Phil, who puts out the best college football preview magazine, he's picking Michigan ahead of Ohio State this year for the first time in 12 years. A lot of Ohio State fans are saying, well, Michigan never gets it done. Why would you pick now? It's just the context of uncertainty about Ohio State with a new quarterback in Justin Fields, with a new head coach in Ryan Day. You have a lot of starters back in defense, but you also have a lot of young guys that could win starting jobs there. I think it's still very hard to get a read on this Ohio State team because I'm not sure who's going to be on the field. They have four new starters on the line. They have some young impact guys like Garrett Wilson on offense that are going to play. it's really interesting. And I think people should be very curious about this team. But I feel like there are not a lot of answers yet. And I think that could mean the first 6 games of the season, there's some flux. Maybe there's some unexpected things. Maybe there's an unexpected loss or two as the Buckeyes kind of figure out who they are.
The other thing that, by all appearances, Ohio State is still keeping up that national recruiting profile that they had with Urban Meyer as the head coach. That hasn't changed at all with Ryan Day. Now, E.J. Smith, son of Emmitt Smith, has announced that Ohio State is one of his finalists. Do you see that national profile continuing? And again, those are all really good things for the Buckeyes.
I think Ryan Day has a strategy here in recruiting, and I think it's two-pronged. One is what you said, keep going after those national guys that Urban Meyer was so successful in getting. But he also has a set track of Ohio guys. They have taken some lower-ranked in-state kids earlier than Urban Meyer would have. So they have this two-pronged approach to make sure they're not left high and dry at the end, trying to flip Ohio kids that tried to slow play. They're taking kids now, kids ranked 400, 500, 900 in the country when that wasn't what they did under Urban Meyer. However, they're still going out and getting the national guys. They're getting Julian Fleming from Pennsylvania. They just got Clark Phillips out of California. They're really West right now. That is the one change. It's where they are now. Meyer had a lot of success in the South. They had a lot of success a couple of years ago. Ohio State right now is very active in Washington, California, and Arizona, more so than they've been at any time in the 15 years that I've covered Ohio State. So I think they see an opening on the West Coast where USC and UCLA are down a little bit. They're competing with SEC schools on the West Coast. And you'd rather compete with SEC schools on the West Coast than in the South. So there's a clear, I think the best thing is there's a clear strategy that they're executing, and it's national and it's local. It might not be quite at the eventual overall rating that Urban Meyer's teams were at, but it's very competitive, very strategic, and I think so far it looks really good.
We'll shift gears one more time. Let's talk about the Browns. Training camp less than a month away now. You did something where you projected the 53-man roster. Talk a little bit about what you saw with that. It's a significant upgrade from where this roster has been in total the past couple of years.
And it is an interesting thing to me. We'll look for it more when camp starts at the end of July is too, because you're going to have some injuries, some things that go wrong, and you can't have 22 good guys. You need 35 good guys. You can start to see that when you see the receivers and you're going 4 deep instead of 1.5 deep. That Odell Beckham on his own is Odell Beckham, but it also means that Rashard Higgins and Antonio Callaway are now your 3rd and 4th best receiver, and that's pretty good. You're getting some depth defensively where you've added a couple young linebackers behind Christian-Kirksey and Joe-Schobert with what they did with Mack Wilson and Sione Takitaki in the draft. You have some players on the rise there. They didn't get Gerald McCoy, but they still have a little depth at defensive end, especially. They have some depth on the defensive line. So it's not just the front line guys. You know, defensively, they're going to use sub packages. They're going to have more like 13 or 14 starters on defense with the different guys they play in different situations. And I think that's as important as the fact that they're top line guys, Myles Garrett, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham. That group is better than it's ever been in Cleveland since the Browns came back. But it's the depth of talent that I think is really starting to show up as well.
Last thing I'll ask you before we let you go, 3 guys that we should keep an eye on, 3 guys that you're really intrigued with as training camp starts for the Browns at the end of July.
Yeah, so I think, again, talking defensive sub packages, it's that nickel corner spot when they're going to have 5 defensive backs on the field almost all the time, whether it's 2 corners and 3 safeties or 3 corners and 2 safeties. So Jermaine Whitehead really flashed in these early camps, sort of out of nowhere, a guy who was added to the roster late last year. He's going to see a lot of action as that 3rd safety. Steve-Wilks played 3 safeties all the time last year in Arizona. So Jermaine Whitehead is going to be really important to this defense. But also TJ Carey as that 3rd corner, that nickel corner inside with Greedy Williams and Denzel Ward outside. It's so important. Those slot corners are so important in college and the NFL right now. So I really am watching those 2 guys defensively. Taki, and you feel like Schobert and Kirksey are going to be the two linebackers on the field most of the time. But this guy's a third-round pick. He's active. He's fast. Mary Kay Cabot has talked about how much the Browns really like him. He's another guy that I'm really watching. So I think defense needs to work itself out a little bit. And then offensively, it's just the fact their depth of playmakers. I think a guy like David Njoku is really interesting because he might be your fifth or sixth best playmaker now. And if he's your fifth or sixth best playmaker, that shows you how deep you are offensively.
Doug Lesmerises, columnist for cleveland.com. As always, we appreciate the insight. Indians, Buckeyes, and the Browns this week with Doug. We're going to step aside and take a quick timeout. When we return to more sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition, Jake Burns will join us. He will be ranking the position players in the division, the AFC North. More sports and Les Levine, Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back.
No other company or product can match the features, benefits, and warranty of an authentic Nature Stone floor.
My basement was a disaster. We tried carpet, we tried tile on our uneven basement floor, but nothing worked.
Moisture, dampness, even flooding will not harm Nature Stone. And with Russell's Promise, our true unconditional warranty, you will never have to replace your basement flooring again. Get Nature Stone installed by the end of June and save up to 50%. Schedule your free cost estimate easily online today at naturestone.com. It's not just a floor, wow, it's Nature Stone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to more sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We're going to stick with our talk about the Cleveland Browns and specifically how some of the skill position players fit within the AFC North. To do that, we welcome in Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report, also a contributor here on cleveland.com. Jake, we appreciate it. You ranked the AFC North quarterbacks. Let's talk a little bit about that. Baker checks in at number 2.
Yeah, I think obviously Baker has an immense amount of talent. There's no doubt about that. And I think people get a little confused why he wouldn't be first overall necessarily. But I think there's a part of this whole thing that you got to look at Ben Roethlisberger's output again, over 5,000 yards, 34 touchdowns. He is still the AFC North king, and 1 year doesn't change that by any stretch of the imagination. Mayfield may have graded out better on Pro Football Focus, but Roethlisberger has a prolonged period of 15 years worth of excellent play on tape. So he had another good year. They do lose Antonio Brown. I think that will play a part in things, but I think it would be premature, especially going into just Mayfield's second year, to tab him as sort of the best quarterback in the division this quickly. He's there. He's on track. He's not far off, but he needs to put another good year or two on tape to take over the reins from Ben.
One thing that Baker does grade out extremely high with is his accuracy out of the pocket. And take me through that and what that means to an offense and how that plays into what the Browns want to do.
Well, it's great for any coach because you're going to call play, and not every play in the NFL is going to go perfectly. I think it's important for everybody who watches the game to understand that, yeah, there's a scheme, there's a thing that the offenses want to do every single play, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to go as planned, especially when you're dealing with 11 fantastic athletes on the other side of the football trying to disrupt things you're doing. So Mayfield's ability to get outside the pocket, help his offensive line by escaping pressure. But not only that, he's not getting outside the pocket to run. He's getting outside the pocket to throw, and he's doing it with a high amount of accuracy and velocity on the football, and not just to his right. Like, people get this misconception that rolling out to the right is the only side quarterbacks are going to be accurate on. That's not the case. Mayfield has plenty of reps on tape where he's rolling to his left out of the pocket and still puts an accurate football in the place of a receiver to allow them to catch and run and get yards after catch. So it's a really important skill. The NFL is sort of a chaotic league, right? They say the best in the NFL can survive in chaos. And Mayfield's one of those guys who, when things get chaotic around him and break down, which happens quite often, he can throw from weird platforms within the pocket, and he can get out of the pocket, find success with his legs, extending plays to throw the football, which is very important.
The other thing that that comes to mind with that is when you put more weapons around him, like a Jarvis Landry, like an Odell Beckham, like a Kareem Hunt, that's just going to enable this offense to flourish as well.
Yeah, so pretty much whoever you leave open on any given play or leave a one-on-one matchup on any given play. And this is what Mahomes was able to do with Kansas City last year, because Patrick Mahomes was the only quarterback in the entire NFL with a better outside of the pocket passer rating than Baker Mayfield, or grade, I should say, from Pro Football Focus, is, whenever you get out of the pocket, then you put those dynamic athletes out in even more space, which is tougher to guard because you don't know from a defensive standpoint which way those guys are going to turn. Are they going to turn upfield? Are they going to come back to the football? Are they going to work laterally? You just don't know, and it gets pretty chaotic. And if you have a quarterback who can get out of the pocket and find those guys all the time, that makes things just really ridiculously hard for defense. And defensive coordinators look to adjust rush lanes, adjust the tempo or the depth of the rush. And if you're doing that as a defensive coordinator, that means you're going to give a quarterback more time in the pocket, which Mayfield's adequate enough. I would say adequate is not the right word. He's good enough from inside the pocket that he can rip you apart from there too, and he proved that just last year. So he's going to be a challenge. People talk about how defensive coordinators are going to adjust for him and all these things are going to throw at him to make him sort of blink. Well, I think that defensive coordinators are going to have to do their share of blinking too, because this kid's pretty good and he's good at both phases of throwing, whether on the run or sitting in the pocket.
Interesting thing that I saw, and I think you saw it as well, a comp that somebody made to Baker Mayfield was Andrew Luck. And the more I think about that, Andrew Luck, when he came out, was one of the most heralded quarterbacks there's been. Now, he's been injured, but do you think that's an interesting comp for Baker Mayfield being Andrew Luck?
Well, I think that where it could get a little head scratching is if you just look at size. Like Andrew Luck was the prototypical guy coming out of college because he's the 6'4", 6'5", 220, 230-pound quarterback who played under center, played in NFL schemes at Stanford under both David Shaw and Jim Harbaugh. So it just made sense at the time, at least Harbaugh's schemes that were in place when he left, that it made sense in time for those people to make that sort of natural NFL transition, and all of those things make sense. It just sort of is, you check all the boxes in the pre-draft process, that's what he's talking about. But as you look at their games, both of those quarterbacks are really adequate at throwing the football from the pocket, tough in the pocket, can get out of sack situations. And if you watch Andrew Luck, which I'm not sure many Browns fans get the opportunity to, when he's healthy, and he was obviously healthy last year and thrived, is that he can get out of the pocket and he does a lot of what Mayfield does, and he throws really well on the run and uses his athletic ability to make throws outside of the pocket. Some quarterbacks get outside of the pocket and they just look to run. Think about Josh Allen, not to knock the rookie, but he kind of got out of the pocket and he was only looking to run, never really looked to throw when he got out of the pocket. Well, that's the difference here, is that Mayfield, Luck, they try to protect their body, throw the football downfield. And I really do see some stylistic comparisons between the two when they are playing the quarterback position. They just don't look the same. One is bigger physically in stature. So I do see that comparison. It was interesting you brought it up today, because now that you talk about it, when I've seen Luck and now that I think about how Baker plays at the NFL level too, I can see where somebody would come up with that.
Let's shift gears a little bit, talk about the running backs in the AFC. This is perhaps the biggest upgrade, I think, for the Browns. Let's look at your rankings in the AFC North running backs and what you see in the division from the running back rankings.
Look, I mean, the AFC North is probably the third or fourth, maybe fifth even best quarterback division, but the running backs in this division, best in the NFL, and I'm not sure it's even close. So if you have to rank Baltimore fourth there with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards, who are two really good players. Edwards obviously is an undrafted free agent, and then Mark Ingram's coming over from a long-tenured, successful run with the New Orleans Saints. If that's your fourth best group, that's saying something. James Conner was a Pro Bowl participant, played in about 12 games, ran for close to 1,000 yards, almost 500 receiving yards, proved to be a dual threat that made most in Pittsburgh completely forget about. Le'Veon Bell, Jalen Samuels is a nice change of pace, nice receiving running back there from NC State as their backup, played well when Conner was out. The second group there, Joe Mixon, the best runner I think you could make a case for his full season being one of the best in the NFL last year. He's right there with Nick Chubb. He had the most yards in the division. He had a little knee ding-up injury there, but he's set for another big year. They're going to give him the football a lot. He's a really good player from Oklahoma. Giovanni Bernard's been doing it for a long time. He's their sort of version of Duke Johnson. He's going to catch the ball out of the backfield there. The Browns bring three frontline running backs. Nick Chubb almost broke the elusiveness rating that Pro Football Focus tracks. He made people miss nonstop, but he's technically sound. He was the highest graded running back in terms of Pro Football Focus's overall grade, which looks at what a player's responsibility is each snap. Duke Johnson, Sharp Football Analysis, has provided great detail about his ability to not only get the ball in open space, catch the football, but, being successful when doing so. He's obviously a proven pass catcher out of the backfield, can give you that change of pace on third downs. And then, Kareem Hunt's a top 5 running back, led the NFL in rushing his rookie year just 2 years ago, was on pace for another really great year last year, 11 games in before the suspension happened. So if you put the stuff off the field aside, look at him. He's a top 5 just true running back in terms of what he's able to do. I put out 5 plays of his that'll show you his impact. And there's some silly plays there in terms of just sheer athletic ability, balance, the ability to shrug off defenders. Those things that Nick Chubb does well, Kareem Hunt does almost as well as he does. So having those two for 8 games together at some point, mix in Duke Johnson, mix in Dontrell Hilliard, who I'm going to write on a little bit, too, is a really nice 4th running back. It's an embarrassment of riches in Cleveland at the running back position.
And we like that. We haven't had an embarrassment of riches at many positions for the Browns. Jake, let's stick around. We need to take a quick time out. When we return, Jake and I will talk defense as we will shift sides of the ball. We'll talk Browns defense. Christian-Kirksey will be a topic of discussion. For Sports Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family cool this summer,
let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant, whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at 440-449-HEAT.
Welcome back to more Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Browns training camp gets underway in less than a month, late July. Let's bring Jake Burns back in. We switch our focus to the defensive side of the ball. Jake, is it fair to say the linebackers with the Browns are kind of the key to how this defense performs?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think they have positional talent at defensive line, especially with that first group is as good as anybody in the NFL. The corners they've brought along, kept that group intact, add Greedy Williams, and then they sort of made up for the loss of Jabril Peppers at the safety position with a multitude of different players there that can fill that role. But the linebackers have to be better. I think over the last few years, there's been a lot of respect for the talent between joe-schobert, Christian-Kirksey, and Jamie Collins before he departed, but they have underperformed the last 2 years. Now, some of that could be very much tied to the system that Greg Williams had in place and the burden it put on the linebackers to play pass or run and sort of putting them at depth. I wrote about Christian-Kirksey. I think he's due for a bounce-back year. He's never been quite as bad as he was last year. He was very erratic in just his processing and reads, and he always just sort of seemed to step slow until his injury there in Week 9. I expect Kirksey to have a better year. I think he'll get back to them. I mean, Kirksey's never going to be an all-pro type player, but he can just be a solid linebacker the way the Browns hope. He sounds healthy. He looked good at training or at minicamp, so we'll hope that trend continues. Joe-Schobert, phenomenal football player, has been to a Pro Bowl, just has had an issue with missed tackles, and as your Mike linebacker, you cannot have issues with missed tackles. Just wrote about him as well. He's a phenomenal coverage player, was one of the best. He actually finished with the second best coverage grade among linebackers, just to Seattle's all-pro, all-world Mike linebacker Bobby Wagner. He was the second highest coverage guy there, Joe-Schobert behind him. So he can cover, but the problem is missed tackles. Joe is not he's a really good athlete, but he's not a great change of direction, a great speed flatline athlete. So that gives him some issues in terms of angles and where he arrives at the football. So he can occasionally arrive behind the ball when his head needs to be out in front, or he gets a bit too lungy on tackles, and it caused him to miss it. He missed 24 tackles this year in just 13 games. He missed 18 tackles last year, so it's a trend. It has to improve. The Browns defense as a whole had the bottom, the group of linebackers in the bottom third, even bottom 3/4 of the league. They're pretty bad as a group in terms of grading out, and the defense as a whole missed 169 total tackles, which is the most Pro Football Focus has recorded for a team since 2011. So it has to improve. That's got to be a big part of what Steve-Wilks is doing. They have to get better linebacker play flat out. Those two are the guys they're banking on, both of which have contracts that they can move on from at the end of the year if the Browns don't feel like the players are meeting the standard. Kirksey has an out after this year with minimal dead cap, and then Joe-Schobert's fighting for his next contract. The Browns drafted, keep in mind, 2 linebackers there, Sione Takitaki, as well as Mack Wilson, those guys who are going to be putting consistent pressure on those guys for playing time. So the Browns are expecting better linebacker play, and if they get good linebacker play in this Steve-Wilks defense, it'll be, in my opinion, the difference from an average to a really good NFL defense.
Do you think the scheme fits what these guys do well as players, what Steve Wilks is going to ask them to do? We kind of alluded to it earlier. Greg Williams was asking them to do things that weren't necessarily strengths. Do you see that kind of shifting focus, if you will?
I'd like to say yes. I think that Wilks has coached successful linebackers, especially Carolina, Thomas Davis, Shaq Barrett, Christian-Kirksey. Those guys, or sorry, Luke Kuechly. So he's gotten production from good linebackers in the past. He's going to the Browns did some weird things with alignment and depth. They would have Schobert playing sometimes 7 yards off the ball, hauling to the middle of the field in what's called Tampa 2 coverage, which is running 2 deep safeties and having your middle linebacker run in deep coverage down the middle of the field to cover any vertical routes, which is a tough burden on linebackers. That is, to fear playing. I got to really haul my butt back to play deep middle, but I also have to be able to run, play true to my run read too. And that just puts guys in difficult positions. And those 2 or 3 yards that Schobert could be off the ball are the difference between arriving on time, arriving on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So he has to get better at being able to make sideline to sideline tackles, something he did not do very much of last year. And the Browns, in general, have to be more instinctive from their linebacker position, shooting gaps, those sort of things have to happen more often. I feel good about this scheme for them. I think that I feel good about the linebacker play that's happened under Steve Wilks and Al Holcomb, who's taken over the linebackers. I think they'll get a little bit better coaching. I think they'll be a little bit more hungry to prove themselves in a different scheme. So there's reasons to feel optimistic on this situation until we don't, until it doesn't work out. So you feel good about it. The Browns are in a good contract situation with both, that they can let those guys go out and prove it and then have some talent ready in case they need to move on.
Jake Burns, as always, we appreciate the insight. Jake Burns breaking down the Browns defense. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. When we return, we'll hear from a couple of those young linebackers, Mack Wilson and Sione Takitaki, talking about the relationship they've developed with each other out in Berea. More sports and Les Levine Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
Welcome back to more sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We talked with Jake Burns about some of the younger players on the Browns, especially the linebackers, Mack Wilson and Sione Takitaki from Brigham Young. 2 of the guys that the Browns drafted this year who have been together in Berea working out. They just left Berea today, as a matter of fact. And really, the 2 have developed quite a chemistry between each other, Mack Wilson and Sione Takitaki, the Browns' young linebackers.
I feel like coming into training camp, I'll be well prepared. I'll be able to practice fast and kind of like give the coaches an idea of how I'm going to really look, going forward.
Have they given you any sense that you are going to get a shot to really earn playing time right away?
I mean, one thing I always keep in the back of my mind, John Dorsey didn't draft 2 inside linebackers for no reason. So I feel like, it's an opportunity out there. So we just got to take advantage and practice hard.
What's the best advice Ray's ever given you?
He called me young line, so he always tell me, you just got to work hard and just play fast, like play with your head on fire. And the game just be easy. At the next level, you got to be able to play faster and kind of read plays faster. So it's just really to change the speed of the next level. So I got to kind of adjust to that, and I'll be all right.
With that in mind, it's hard to maybe do that in a mini camp setting where you don't have pads on. So, how excited are you in a month or so to put those pads on and kind of show what you can do?
I'm definitely excited. Like Coach said, it's going to separate the boys from the men, and I just want to be able to show the coaches Mr. Dorsey and all those guys that, you know, I'm ready for whatever, you know, gonna come against me, you know, this upcoming season. When you put on pads, you'll be able to see what kind of player a person really is. So I'm definitely ready.
Will you spend this time away really kind of hammering the playbook so you can be as fast as you want to be once you get to training camp?
Yeah, I would say that. Me and Taki try to get at least 30 minutes in a day to just kind of like refresh, you know, over the plays, because it's been a minute since, you know, we've had an actual physical practice. So we just kind of like try to hit 30 minutes a day as much as we can, and just to refresh everything, because it kind of came natural. Like throughout OTAs, the plays kind of started coming natural. So we just got to continue to do that in training camp. I feel like we won't miss a beat.
And you think that's why you weren't as fast as you wanted to be, just because of is it the playbook, or just getting used to everything that goes kind of into being in the NFL?
I mean, that too. It was a playbook most importantly, because, you know, you have a whole new playbook, like a whole new set of plays going in the next day. Like we'll practice one day and have these plays. The next night you got to study a new set of plays, and you still gonna go over the same plays that you went over the day before. So it was a lot. Yeah. And, you know, I feel like we kind of got comfortable, like as it got towards the end of OTAs.
Take one more for Matt. What have you learned about Taki since you've been here with him? And you talk about spending time with him, and how much have you guys bonded?
I met Taki at the combine. You know, he was a guy who had a lot of energy, and I was just like, man, who is this guy? You know, he had a lot of energy about himself, laughing, motivational. And when I found out, you know, he got drafted, then I got the call, it was kind of like, you know, like, it's gonna be fun, kind of, sort of. So we was roommates in the hotel and stuff, and I kind of got to know him, we talked, chill. He's a goofy person, down to earth. We kind of both love each other, you can say, and, you know, he's definitely gonna be my brother forever.
You know, I feel like coming in, any rookie, you know, is expecting to want to start, you know what I mean? You work so hard, and for myself, that's how I feel. You know, I feel like I'm gonna keep pushing until I get to where I want to be. But, you know, for now, you know, I'm wherever, you know, the team needs me. But definitely, man, the starting spot is definitely something I want to keep working towards.
So when we talk about competition, obviously you're in a position where you guys put the pads on. That makes a big difference in how things are actually going to shake out. Yeah. How much do you look forward to that? Especially, you know, you're a guy with a reputation of, you know, playing hard all the time, running around like crazy, and having a high motor. Is that something you look forward to, showing the physical part of your game? I do. I feel like putting the pads on, you know, you definitely get to showcase a little bit more than just having, you know, just a helmet on. You know, you're out there trying to be safe, and I feel like with the pads you can kind of be a little bit more physical out there, run gas, things like that. So I'm definitely excited to put on the pads and show the coaches what I could do, you know, when we're all strapped down. So, yeah.
But the coaches,
yeah, that's my boy, man. He's funny. He's a funny dude. They had me and him roomed at the hotel, so I got to know him quite a bit. But yeah, we gained a brotherhood, you know, just in this little time that we've known each other, and not just Mac Wilson, all the rookies, you know, Greedy, everybody else, you know. But yeah, with Mac, you know, that's my dude. We're gonna be playing football on the same field, so you definitely got to have, that camaraderie and all that stuff. So yeah, that's a cool cat.
Have the coaches given you an indication that you're gonna get that chance to fight for that starting spot once you get to training camp?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, they're gonna let everybody compete. You know, especially in the linebacker room, they're gonna let all the linebackers compete, and the best guy gets the job. You know, that's the mentality of the NFL overall. You know, if you perform out there, you're gonna get the job. If you don't, you know, then that's that.
So again, Taki and Wilson have left Cleveland. They'll come back in less than a month for the beginning of training camp. Well, it's NBA free agency season. We will welcome in Sam Amico of AmicoHoops.net. Straight ahead on more sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program has been recognizing role model students and teachers since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Supporting Education. There, you can nominate students in kindergarten through 12th grade as academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible for the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. It is NBA free agent season. All the craziness will begin over the weekend. Teams are now negotiating with the various free agents. To get the latest, let's welcome in Sam Amico from AmicoHoops.net. And you got to hit refresh on AmicoHoops.net repeatedly now because you want to get the latest news. Sam, we appreciate the time. Let's start with some Cavs stuff. First of all, J.R. Smith's contract status. Explain to us, Sunday's the deadline when they have to decide whether they extend it or whether they cut him. What goes into that decision from the Cavs' perspective?
First of all, they want to see if they can get something feasible in return for him. Obviously, you'd have to take on some money if you're the Cavaliers and you trade J.R. Smith, which they are willing to do wisely. But they also need to determine, they would do that, by the way. They would take on more money if they get a nice asset in return. Now, if you can't get a nice asset in return, then you obviously cut JR before Sunday. You eat what is guaranteed, as you see there. What's guaranteed is $3.8 million. You're just going to have to live with that because that beats $15.6 million. So they're going to try to trade him probably right up until the very last minute. And if they can't do that, he will be waived. I suspect, and I think that the Cavaliers suspect, that they will end up waiving him. But there are a lot of teams looking to clear cap space, and JR's contract is valuable in that situation. Portland, Oklahoma City, Houston, who's chasing Jimmy Butler in free agency, they could all use that contract to waive J.R. Smith. But the Cavs have to agree to a deal for that to happen.
What about free agents for the Cavs? Are they looking at any? Is it likely that that the Cavs potentially sign any free agents, or what's your sense that you're getting with the Cavs in free agency?
Well, it's very unlikely that they're going to sign anybody of note. They could potentially sign some undrafted rookies. They just don't have the room under the salary cap to really bring in anybody that's really going to be anything more than a surprise contributor. You're not going to get a guy who is, well, he's going to help right away. You may get some guys who are more or less, well, maybe they'll help. So, and that even goes if they do trade JR's contract, because they are still going to be paying luxury tax and be over the salary cap. So that's a tough situation in free agency. But they will certainly try to bring in those type of guys that can audition for a role and for a contract, whether it's summer league, training camp, before training camp. They will definitely be a third or fourth tier free agent type of player. But if the Cavs are going to make some roster moves, they're going to have to do it with obviously the draft, which they did, bringing in 3 new guys, as well as trades. Those are really their 2 options. Free agents, it's going to be a tough road to hoe because they just don't have the money and they don't have the winning record.
When you look at Kevin Love, is that a guy that do you still think he'll be here, or is that somebody that they could eventually look to move, or would they have to be overwhelmed to trade Kevin Love at this point?
Right now, they'd have to be overwhelmed, and they're not going to get that offer, I wouldn't think, simply because Kevin hasn't been able to stay on the court. He wasn't able to stay on the court last year, so teams aren't going to go all in and trade for him. You obviously know New Orleans with David Griffin, the GM there, loves Kevin Love, would love to get him, but it's just too hard. For the Cavs, they're not going to just give him away because he can be a vital piece in terms of helping the younger players develop. So as long as there's a trade deadline or it's trade season, we're going to hear Kevin Love's name come up. However, it's going to be tough to move him right now. I think that potentially before the trade deadline, after the season starts, and if he proves that he can stay out on the floor and be effective, contenders will go after him and give the Cavs the type of pieces they may want, but it's just not going to happen this summer.
Let's shift the focus and talk a little bit about the Lakers. They've cleared some cap space. LeBron and AD now have another max contract. Who are guys that they're looking at, and who's realistic to potentially go out and join the new super team, the Lakers?
Well, first of all, they are going to shoot for the moon. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, Kyrie-Irving, Jimmy Butler. Those are guys on their list. The only real big name that they know they don't really have a shot at is Kevin-Durant. So they're going to go after the rest of them, and the rest of them are going to probably listen and consider, because you do have LeBron, you do have Anthony Davis, you do have Hollywood behind you, which is probably a bigger deal than anything else. There are some free agents. I think guys are going to listen, but free agents today know if you go out there, you're playing second or third fiddle to LeBron and LeBron who's going to be 35 in December, and you're going to play probably third fiddle maybe to Anthony Davis. So it's got to be a guy with the right mindset, to go out there and be one of those big three, but you're going to be C no matter how good you are. Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie-Irving, whoever is going to be number three, because they aren't going to live up to the star power of the clutch clients, which is, of course, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So, I would be shocked if Kawhi Leonard went there. I would be pretty surprised if Kyrie-Irving went there, only because those guys are kind of marched to their own drum. And you can't do that under LeBron's shadow. You just can't. And I would be surprised to see either of those two guys go there. I'd be surprised to see Klay Thompson go anywhere but Golden State. So really that kind of would leave to me the Lakers to choose between guys like D'Angelo Russell, maybe Jimmy Butler, maybe those second tier guys that are right there, but not quite these, would form a superpower.
Let's shift gears a little bit more. Kyrie-Irving, Kemba-Walker, where do you think those two end up? And if Kemba-Walker, in fact, ends up at the Celtics, does he make him maybe even a little bit better is that a better fit than Kyrie-Irving?
Well, I think Kemba's not as talented as Kyrie. Kemba's very talented, but he's not as good of an individual player as Kyrie. But there's a lot less stuff surrounding Kemba-Walker. He's all basketball. He is a good teammate. He's loved by his teammates, and he's loved by his coaches. He's a great leader, and I don't know that all that applies to Kyrie-Irving. I think that we've seen situations and heard about situations where Kyrie-Irving is not beloved by his teammates. He's can be difficult to coach. So if that's the situation, I think everybody thinks Kyrie-Irving's going to the Brooklyn Nets, so, I mean, it just sounds that that's the way. And if that's the way it's going to happen, then, the Celtics may take a step up, frankly, with a guy like Kemba-Walker. Heck, 2 years ago, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals with Terry Rozier at point guard. And Terry's a nice player, don't get me wrong, but it's really about who's willing to play in the system. And, there's a lot of talent there and a lot of depth. Even if they lose Al Horford, he's replaceable. So I think the Celtics might be happy if they end up with Kemba instead of Kyrie.
Sam Amico from AmicoHoops.net joining us. Last thing I'll ask you, Kevin Durant, where do you think he ends up? What have you heard about Durant?
I just actually posted something on the website a couple hours ago about Kevin Durant, and the situation is it does seem like it's down to 4 teams. The word is with him, unlike Kawhi Leonard, the word around the league with Kawhi Leonard is he already knows where he's signing. He's just meeting with these teams, and no one else knows, but the word is Kawhi Leonard knows. With Kevin Durant, it's supposed to be different. Around the league, the word is that he doesn't yet know where he's going. He has not made a firm decision. He may be leaning one way, but his situation's very unique because the first year of this contract, you're paying him to rehab an injury. He will not play next year unless it's an outright miracle. And then he's going to come back at 31 years old off Achilles surgery without having played for a year. There's a lot of variables involved with Kevin Durant. Now, that said, the New York Knicks, Brooklyn Nets, Golden State Warriors, and Los Angeles Clippers are all prepared to offer him a maximum contract. and take that risk with him. He is a risk now simply because of that injury, and it's very rare for guys to come back as good as they were before. Most guys don't even come back close to as good as they were before, especially on the other side of 30. So that's a very unique situation to watch, but what we're hearing about him is really, I've heard that it's between the Nets and the Warriors, but the Knicks really seem to think they have a realistic shot, and everybody's saying don't rule out the Clippers here either. If the Clippers can get Durant and Butler, well, then maybe they'll do that. But it's a very interesting, intriguing year for free agency because there are so many potential moving parts that can alter the course of your franchise. Before, it's like LeBron-James and nobody. Now it's like 5, 6, 7 guys that could go somewhere new and completely change the course of not only that particular franchise, but the entire league and how teams are viewed as favorites and whatnot.
Sam Amico, we appreciate the time. Sam Amico from AmicoHoops.net. We want you to go out and check out AmicoHoops.net. Updated constantly for your latest NBA news. Important to this time of year, Sam and his crew will have updates on the latest free agents. Where are people going? What is the talk around the NBA? Sam and AmicoHoops.net will have that as it happens. So keep hitting refresh all weekend long as NBA free agency closes in. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of More Sports and Less Levine. I'm Dave Bacon. Have a great weekend, and in case we don't see you next week, have a great 4th of July. Les Levine will be back in the chair Monday night for More Sports and Less Levine. We'll see you, everyone.